on December 26, 1944, at approximately 8 a.m. in the small Italian mountain village of Samacolonia. First, Lieutenant John Robert Fox crouched on the second floor of a stone house. Snow dusted the rooftops. The air was bitter cold. Below, German troops from the 148th Infantry Division, part of a larger push in the Serchio River Valley, advanced through narrow streets, rifles ready, supported by machine guns and mortars. Fox, acting as forward observer for the 598th Field Artillery Battalion, had stayed behind with a small party after most U.S. infantry withdrew overnight. Through field glasses, he watched the enemy pour in hundreds strong, overwhelming the thin defensive line. His radio crackled. He adjusted fire, calling down 105mm howitzer. Rounds closer and closer. Bring it in 60 yards. He transmitted calmly. The battalion commander protested. Too close. Danger to friendly forces. Fox insisted. As Germans surrounded the house, entering lower floors, he gave the final adjustment coordinates, placing shells directly on his position. When the operator hesitated, warning it would land on him, Fox replied, "Fire it. There's more of them than there are of us. Heave it to hell." Shells screamed overhead, detonating in thunderous blasts. Stone walls crumbled. Shrapnel tore through the air. Fox and his observer party stalwart, Brooks, and others remained at their post, directing until the end. The barrage inflicted heavy casualties on the Germans below, stalling the momentum long enough for American units to fall back, reorganize, and prepare counter. When U.S. forces retook the village days later, they found Fox's body amid the rubble, still clutching his radio. The action cost him his life, but saved countless others by delaying the enemy advance. In those frozen moments, with death closing in, Fox made the unthinkable choice, not out of despair, but calculated sacrifice. He turned the artillery, meant to protect from afar, into a final weapon at point-blank range. The question lingers. How does one find the resolve to summon destruction on oneself when escape is possible? On that Christmas day after in the Apennines, John Fox answered with quiet finality, his last transmission echoing over the radio as shells fell. This sacrifice occurred during the Gothic Line campaign in Italy. Late 1944, as Allied forces pushed northward against entrenched German defenses in the Apennine Mountains. The 92nd Infantry Division Buffalo Soldiers, an African-American unit in a segregated U.S. Army, faced German counterattacks in the Serchio Valley sector near Samacolonia, a strategic hill village controlling approaches to key supply routes. On Christmas night 1944, German forces launched a limited offensive to disrupt Allied lines. Before winter fully set in, John Robert Fox, born 1915 in Cincinnati, Ohio, was a forward artillery observer attached to Canaan Company, 366th Infantry Regiment. Observers like him operated ahead of main lines, spotting targets and directing fire from 105mm howitzers and other artillery pieces positioned miles back, equipped with maps, binoculars, radio -300 Seychelles rupees, or similar, and sometimes a small security detail. They called in barrages, using grid coordinates and adjustments. 100. Most U.S. troops evacuated Samacolonia on December 25th to 26th. But Fox volunteered to remain with a handful of men to maintain observation and slow the German advance. From a second-floor vantage in a sturdy stone house, he tracked movements and relayed precise fire missions. As Germans flooded the streets' estimated company strength or more, he progressively walked the barrage inward, risking danger close rounds that could hit friendlies. The importance of this stand lay in buying critical time. A breakthrough here could have rolled up Allied flanks, threatened rear areas, and complicated winter defenses. Fox's final call bringing 105mm shells, high-explosive rounds from M2A1 howitzers, directly onto his location caused heavy German losses approx. 100 killed per citation. Disrupted momentum, and allowed disorganized U.S. infantry and artillery to regroup. Without delay, the enemy might have pushed deeper before reinforcements arrived. Artillery in World War II was devastating. 105mm shells had a lethal radius of 30 to 50 yards, fragmentation covering wider areas. Calling it on oneself was extreme rare, but documented in desperate stands, for example. Similar acts in other theaters. Fox's party included Privates Willie and John, among others. Most perished in the barrage. Bodies were recovered later when the village was retaken. Fox received the Distinguished Service Cross posthumously in 1982, upgraded to Medal of Honor in 1997 after a review. Part of efforts recognizing overlooked black soldiers, the citation details his extraordinary heroism, indifference to personal safety, and impact on delaying the enemy. This event highlights the brutal calculus of war. Isolated observers, thin lines, winter terrain, and the human cost of holding ground. It underscores themes of sacrifice and segregated units facing discrimination, yet proving valor under fire. Sommacolonia's defense, though small, contributed to stabilizing the Italian front. Durée, a harsh winter. Understanding this context frames Fox's decision not reckless, but deliberate to use the most immediate tool available, even if it meant his own end, to protect a larger force. The act remains a stark record of one man's choice amid chaos, where survival for others demanded the ultimate price. The morning of December 26, 1944, dawned cold and gray over snow. At 7 a.m., First Lieutenant John Robert Fox and a small observation party 3 enlisted men from the 92nd Infantry Division, positioned in a sturdy two-story stone house on the edge of the village square. The house overlooked the main approach road from the north. Snow lay thin on rooftops. The air carried the sharp smell of pine and gunpowder from earlier skirmishes. Most American troops had pulled back the previous night under heavy pressure, but Fox had volunteered to stay, radioing in to direct artillery fire and slow any German push. By 8 a.m., the first German patrols appeared. Scouts from the 148th Grenadier Regiment, 148th Infantry Division moving cautiously through alleys, rifles at the ready. Fox spotted them through binoculars, relayed coordinates to the 598th Field Artillery Battalion miles to the rear. "Batterie, adjust. Over," he transmitted calmly. The first 105mm howitzer rounds landed 200 yards short, exploding in white bursts against the hillside. He adjusted. "Add 100. Over." Shells walked closer, clearing the road and scattering the scouts. At 8:30 a.m., the main force arrived. Hundreds of German infantry poured into the village streets, supported by MG-42 machine guns chattering from windows and mortar lobbing 81mm rounds. Fox called fire missions in rapid succession. Fire for effect. Grid 456 to 789. Over. Shells slammed down, shredding stone walls and sending troops diving for cover. Germans advanced house by house, using grenades and automatic fire to clear buildings. Fox's party returned sporadic rifle fire with M1 Garands from upper windows, but the enemy numbers grew overwhelming. Around 9:15 a.m., Germans reached the square below the observation post. A squad entered the ground floor of Fox's house. Boots echoed on stone stairs. Fox and his men barricaded the second-floor door with furniture. Through a broken window, Fox watched enemy soldiers, massing perhaps 200, 300, in the immediate area preparing to push south. toward American fallback positions. He knew if they broke through unchecked, the advance could roll up the thin line and threaten artillery positions farther back. At 9:45 a.m., Fox made the decision. He keyed the radio. Bring it in closer 60 yards. The battalion fire direction center hesitated. That's danger, close confirm. Fox replied. Confirmed. Adjust fire 60 yards. My position. The operator protested again. Lieutenant, that will land on you. Fox's voice stayed level. There's more of them than there are of us. Fire it. Give them hell. Seconds later, the first adjusted round screamed in. 105mm high explosive shells, each weighing 33 pounds, packed with TNT, detonated in rapid succession. The house shook violently. Ceilings cracked. Dust and debris rained down. Shrapnel tore through walls. One shell struck the roof, collapsing part of the upper floor. Fox continued transmitting adjustments even as the building burned around him. Drop 25 fire for effect. The barrage intensified, dozens of rounds landing within 100 yards, some directly on the house and square below. German troops caught in the open suffered heavily. Bodies littered the streets. Wounded screamed amid smoke and flame. The advanced stalled survivors scrambled for cover. Momentum broken. Fox's party fought on briefly with rifles and grenades, but the shelling was indiscriminate. A direct hit demolished the room. Fox and at least 2 of his men were killed instantly. The radio went silent. The barrage lasted perhaps 15 to 20 minutes. When it lifted, the German push had lost cohesion. Surviving troops withdrew to reorganize, giving American infantry and supporting units precious hours to fall back in good order, dig in new positions, and call in reserves. Later estimates placed German casualties from the fire mission at around 100 killed, with many more wounded. Severe losses for a limited offensive. Heroics emerged in the quiet resolve. Fox remained at his post, directing fire, while the building collapsed. His enlisted observers Sprivitz, Willie H. Stallworth, and John W. Brooks, among them, stayed with him, manning windows and passing ammunition until the end. They chose not to flee when escape was still possible. Losses were totaled for the observation party, all killed in the barrage they summoned. Technology shaped the stand. The -300 Seychelles rupees walkie-talkie backpack radio allowed real-time adjustments over miles. 105mm M2A. 1 howitzer, standard U.S. divisional artillery, fired heat rounds with a 30 to 50 yard lethal radius. Fragmentation spreading farther. German weapons included Kar 98K rifles, MP40 submachine guns, MG42, ISA 1,200 rounds per minute, and Panzerfaust, effective in close streets, but vulnerable in open ground to artillery. Twists came in the timing. The Germans expected little resistance after the main withdrawal. Instead, they walked into a precise, devastating fire mission. The friendly Rischel's landing on Americans was accepted by Fox to maximize effect. Another twist. The house held longer than expected, allowing extra adjustments before collapse. The climax unfolded in the final minutes of the barrage, at approximately 10 a.m., as shells rained down. Fox transmitted one last correction. "We're getting it now, keep it coming." Static filled the line, then silence. The house took multiple direct hits. Roof beams snapped, walls buckled inward, shrapnel and blast waves tore through the room. Fox was struck fatally, likely by fragments or collapsing stone still at the radio. His observers perished beside him, bodies buried under rubble. The barrage ended around 10:15 a.m. Smoke hung thick over Samacolonia. Fires burned in several buildings. German survivors, shocked by the intensity, pulled back to the village outskirts. The advance halted. Without Fox's fire mission, the enemy might have pressed south immediately, overrunning disorganized American positions before reinforcements arrived. Resolution came days later. On December 28th to 29th, U.S. forces counterattacked and retook some. Search parties found Fox's body amid the ruins, radio handset still clutched in his hand. Nearby lay the remains of his party. German dead littered the square and streets, evidence of the barrage's effect. The delay allowed the 92nd Division to stabilize the line, bring up additional artillery and infantry, and blunt the German thrust in the Serchio Valley. Fox was initially awarded the Distinguished Service Cross posthumously. In 1982, the citation was reviewed. In 1997, after advocacy highlighting valor of black soldiers in segregated units, it was upgraded to the Medal of Honor. The citation reads, "His gallant and intrepid action saved many American lives and contributed materially to the eventual defeat of the enemy in this sector. The action taught a stark lesson. Sacrifice at the right moment can shift the balance." Fox did not call fire lightly. He weighed the numbers, hundreds of advancing Germans against a handful of defenders, and chose the only option that preserved the larger force. It showed that artillery, when directed with precision and courage, becomes a weapon of last resort even for the observer himself. It also revealed the human cost. Fox, 29 years old, left a wife and daughter. His observers died beside him. The decision demanded not impulse, but cold calculation amid chaos. Radio steady, voice calm, eyes on the enemy below. Survival for others required his own end. In the end, the advance stopped, not because the line was unbreakable, but because one man made it unbreakable for a critical hour. The shells he summoned fell on him, but they fell harder on the enemy. The village was retaken, the front held, and the war moved on. Fox's final transmission, "Fire it," echoed as a quiet testament. When everything is lost except duty, duty alone can still win time, still save lives, still matter. John Robert Fox's body was recovered from the rubble of Samacolonia when American forces reinterred the village on December 28, 1944. He was buried initially in a temporary cemetery in Italy, later reinterred with full military honors. His wife, Arlene, and young daughter received the news in Cincinnati. Another family left to carry the weight of a war that took their husband and father. In 1982, Fox was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross posthumously. In 1997, after a review of records highlighting acts of valor by African American soldiers in segregated units, the award was upgraded to the Medal of Honor. The citation hangs in memorials today, a quiet record of one man's final choice. Samacolonia itself bears Scout's rebuilt stone houses, a small plaque near the square remembering the defenders. The Serchio Valley stabilized in the weeks that followed. The German offensive in that sector fizzled under winter conditions and Allied pressure. Fox's barrage had bought the necessary hours. The Italian campaign ground on until spring 1945, but his stand prevented a deeper penetration that winter. Fox never sought recognition. He was a forward observer, doing what observers sometimes must: see the enemy, call to fire, accept the consequences. His last words over the radio: "Fire it. There's more of them than there are of us." We're not dramatic rhetoric, but a simple calculation in the moment. He turned the artillery on himself so others could live, reorganize, fight another day. The act remains one of the starkest examples of deliberate sacrifice in World War II. It showed that in the chaos of battle, when positions collapse and numbers overwhelm, one voice on a radio can still change the equation, not through personal combat, but through the willingness to summon destruction on one's own coordinates. The shells fell, the house collapsed, the advance halted. Lives were saved downstream because one lieutenant stayed until the end. Fox's story endures, not as legend, but as fact. Duty can demand everything, and sometimes one person pays the price so many others do not. I've just said what's recorded in history. You should find out the real truth yourself. We have written the sources from which we got this story in the description of this video, and we have always been, and will be, supporters of the oppressed, regardless of their color, race, or country. This world and its creator are also with the oppressed. Like this video, if tales of selfless courage hit hard, comment below what those folks' final call say about sacrifice in war. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more forgotten WWII stories of ordinary men facing impossible choices. See you in the next one.